My daughter-in-law threw my clothes into the pigsty and said, "You might as well sleep out here, old woman." And that was on my 70th birthday. She had no idea that just 15 minutes earlier, I had decided to sign over all my assets to her and her husband. I'm glad you're here. Stay until the end and tell me what city you're watching my story from. I want to know how far it has traveled. It was my 70th birthday. I took out my floral dress, the one I only wore on special occasions, and ironed it carefully. My son, James, had told me last week that there would be a big surprise for me today. I thought maybe they were taking me to get family photos done. The hours passed. It was almost noon when I heard the front gate creak open. I got up quickly, wiped my hands on my apron, and hurried to the entrance. First, Monica, my daughter-in-law, walked in. She was carrying a large bag, a deep frown on her face. She didn't even look at me. Behind her was James, helping his mother, Eleanor, who had a cast on one leg and was holding a red handkerchief. Monica let the door slam shut and said bluntly, "My mother had an accident. She's going to stay here until she recovers." "Of course," I said immediately. "No problem at all. Make yourselves at home, whatever she needs." The moment they crossed the living room, Monica went straight to my bedroom. She opened the closet, pulled out drawers, and looked at everything as if it were already hers. Then, she looked at me for the first time. "My mom will be sleeping in here. You can find somewhere else." "That's fine," I replied. "I can sleep on the floor if I have to." "You can't," Eleanor interrupted from the armchair. "If I trip over you, I'll break my leg all over again. Then I'll move to the living room." "Don't you worry," I said. But Monica just laughed, a dry, humorless sound. "I think there's a more appropriate place for you." She walked out of the room and went straight back to my closet. She started pulling out all my clothes, tossing them onto a chair. I rushed toward her, worried. "Where are you taking my clothes?" She didn't answer. She gathered the wadded-up pile of clothes and, without a glance back, walked out the back door toward the yard. James followed her, silent. I went after them, still not understanding. I watched her walk toward the old pig pen, the one we'd barely used since we sold the animals. She stopped right at the gate, turned, and looked at me. "You'd better sleep here, ma'am. This place suits you more." And without waiting for a reply, she threw my things onto the damp straw. My shawl landed in a patch of mud. My wedding dress, the only memento I had of that day with my late husband, got snagged on a broken board. I ran to pick everything up. "No, please," I yelled. "Don't do that." But she shoved me hard with her arm. I lost my balance and fell into the mud. A sharp pain shot through my hip. I stayed on the ground for a moment, breathing heavily. James said nothing. He just looked down at the ground. Just then, Eleanor came out with her cane. She stood there, watching the scene. "You're going too far, honey, . You shut up, too," Monica yelled at her. "You want to sleep on the floor again. I'm doing all of this for you." I gathered my things in silence. My face was wet. I didn't know if it was from the rain or from the rage. My wedding dress had a tear at the hem. My handkerchiefs smelled like manure. James wouldn't look at me. Monica had already turned her back. I got up with difficulty, brushed the mud from my knees, and said, barely raising my voice, "It's okay. I understand now." I walked slowly back to the house. I went into my room, opened the drawer of the nightstand, and took out an envelope. Inside were the papers for the house, with the transfer of ownership I had prepared weeks ago, made out to James and Monica. I had thought it was time to leave everything in their hands, but no. I tore the envelope firmly. I ripped it in half, then into quarters. I went to the kitchen, opened the wood-fired stove, and threw the papers inside. Then, I lit a match. I just stood there, watching the flames. No one came to ask what I was doing. No one asked if I needed anything. I packed my clothes into my oldest canvas bag. I packed 2 changes of clothes, my blue shawl, and the coin purse with the few dollars I had left. I left through the back door without making a sound. Monica was taking a nap after her tantrum, and James had left early. No one saw me go. I closed the door carefully, without slamming it. When I reached the corner, it started to drizzle again. I put my shawl over my head and walked toward the bus stop. There, under the rusty tin roof, was a soaking wet little boy, selling lottery tickets. "Ma, single quotes, could you please buy one?" he asked, his eyes wide, shivering. I took out a coin and said, "Give me 2, son." I put them in my bag without looking at the numbers. I didn't care if I won or not. I did it because the boy was wetter than I was. I got on the bus heading toward the Millbrook district, where my friend Louise lived. We met over 30 years ago when we worked together in a diner. She stayed in the city, I moved to the farm, but we never lost touch. I sat by the window, the glass fogged up on the inside and covered with raindrops on the outside. I watched the water run down the streets, and just like that, memories started flooding back, as if someone were rewinding a tape. James was 2 when his father left. One day, he got up, put on his clean shirt, and never came back. They say he left with a younger woman. I never confirmed it. I was left to raise my son with what little I had. I worked washing dishes at a diner. In return, they gave me a little food for me and the boy. Every night, before sleeping, I'd count the coins I'd earned. I'd smooth them out with my fingers, one by one, and keep them in a little metal box. I dreamed of having my own house. One day, 13 years later, I did it. I made the last house payment right when James started high school. It was the greatest achievement of my life. Then I remembered the day he introduced me to Monica. They arrived together one afternoon. She was wearing an expensive dress and a perfume that filled the entire house. The first thing she said when she walked in was, "This place is so dark and feels suffocating. How can you live like this?" James looked at her nervously. I hurried to say, "If you need more space, we can move some furniture out, dear." She didn't even answer me. She just turned to look somewhere else, raising an eyebrow. That night, I heard her talking on the phone. She was in the yard, but her voice carried through the window. "It's awful here, Mom. It smells like a pigsty. The house and the old woman, well, they're the same. I don't know how long I can take this." I stayed awake all night, hugging my pillow. After the wedding, I swallowed my pride. Monica never ate what I cooked. She said the smell from the kitchen made her sick. I would get up early to wash all 3 of our clothes. She never thanked me. One time, James said to me at dinner, "Mom, don't make Monica feel bad. Her mother put up money for us to open the business." I stayed quiet. I thought about the savings I gave them when they wanted to start the shop. I never asked for it back, and they never mentioned it. The bus stopped near Louise's street. I got off, my bag on my shoulder. I walked to her house and knocked 3 times. She opened the door, and her face fell. "Grace, what happened to you? Why are you here like this, all wet and carrying that bag? Can I come in?" "Of course, get in here, woman. Come on inside." I went in and sat on her wicker armchair. I set my bag aside. She offered me a towel and a hot coffee. "Did something happen with James?" she asked. "Everything," I replied. And I told her about the morning, the chicken and the corn cakes, the surprise, the arrival of his mother-in-law, the bedroom, the pig pen. I didn't hide a thing. Louise was quiet, looking at me. "And what did you do?" "I burned the house papers. They were already signed over to them." "You had signed them?" "Yes. And you don't have them anymore?" "No. I burned them in the wood stove." She stared into her coffee cup for a while. Then she asked, "Do you still have the original deed?" "Yes, I have that. It's in my purse." "Then tomorrow, we're going to see George, the lawyer who helped me with that land issue in San Miguel. You remember him?" "Yes, the one with the thick glasses. That's the one." "Enough of bowing your head. If they were willing to turn their back on you, you can turn your back on them." I nodded. I had no words left. "You can stay here as long as you need. I have a little bed in the back room, and if you don't mind the neighbor's rooster, you'll sleep peacefully." "Thank you, Louise." "Don't thank me. Just don't you go disappearing on me again." I stayed at her house that night. I put on the pajamas she lent me, a pair with sunflowers on them. I lay down on the bed, which creaked with every movement but smelled clean. I didn't cry. I didn't pray either. I just closed my eyes and waited for the night to pass. The next day, I woke up before the neighbor's rooster crowed. The rain was still falling softly, as if it didn't want to disturb anyone. The room where I slept at Louise's house was tiny. Just a mattress on the floor, a plastic table, and a backless pine chair. I stretched my bones slowly, washed my face with cold water from the sink, and went straight to the kitchen. I put water on to boil for tea. When Louise came in, still in her robe, she asked, "Did you sleep well?" I nodded as I poured the tea into 2 mismatched cups. We sat down to a breakfast of stale bread dipped in black coffee. We ate in silence, just listening to the rain drumming on the tin roof. When we finished, Louise stood up, went to her room, and came back with a thick notebook filled with sticky notes and phone numbers written in smudged ink. You remember, Mr. George, the lawyer who helped me with the land in Dolores? Yes, the one with the glasses like Coke bottle bottoms, I said. That's him. He owes me a favor. Want me to call him? I nodded again. She dialed a number, waited, spoke with him for a few minutes, and then handed me the phone. Mrs. Grace, George said from the other end, can you come to my office this afternoon? I'm nearby, on Obregon Street. Yes, Mr. George, I'll be there. Thank you. I hung up, grateful. Louise winked at me. Told you that man doesn't forget things. I went for my bag and put the deed to the house inside. It still smelled of ash from the papers I had burned. I also packed a change of clothes, just in case. I walked to the office. It wasn't far, about 5 blocks uphill. I passed the city market, and right outside a locksmith's shop, I saw the same boy who had been selling lottery tickets the day before. He was sitting there, soaked, huddled like a cat in the rain. Did you eat anything yesterday? I asked him. He shook his head, without looking up. I went to the nearest stall, bought 2 hot tamales, and gave them to him. He looked at me as if he didn't know whether to cry or eat. Give me 2 more tickets, I asked. He pulled out 2 crumpled tickets, their corners wet, and handed them to me without a word. I put them in my coin purse without looking at the numbers. It was becoming a habit. I kept walking to Mr. George's office. It was an old building with a green gate. I rang the bell, and a young woman with her hair pulled back opened the door. Mrs. Grace, come in. The lawyer is expecting you. I entered. George was grayer than the last time I saw him, but just as sharp. He offered me a seat, a cup of coffee, and a fan that barely worked. Show me the papers, please. I handed him the deed. He reviewed it carefully. Are you sure you want to sell? That house isn't mine anymore, Mr. George, even if the paper says otherwise. He didn't ask any more questions. He just nodded, jotted some things in his notebook, and told me, we'll prepare a sales contract. We need to get the house appraised again, but I estimate I'll have it ready in 3 days. Does that work for you? That's perfect. Are there any heirs? Any legal impediments? No. Everything is in my name, and I don't plan on leaving anything to anyone. Very well, he said, closing the folder. Come back on Friday. I left the office and went straight to the county records office. I requested a form to remove my name from the resident registry of James's house. Are you sure, ma'am? The clerk asked me. A young woman with long blue painted nails, more sure than ever. She signed, stamped, and stapled. She handed me a coffee afterward. I went to the bus terminal. I found a payphone and dialed the number of Maggie, the owner of the diner where I had worked years ago. Maggie, it's me, Grace. Grace, it's been so long. Are you okay? More or less. Do you still have that back room, the one you used as a storeroom? Yes, it's been empty since my nephew left. Why? I want to rent it. I'm moving. She was silent for a few seconds. You don't have to pay me anything right now. Just come on over. You know I'm fond of you. Thank you, but I'll pay. I just need 2 days to get there. I hung up. I jotted down the exact address. When I got back to Louise's house, I sat on the porch. I took out the papers George had marked with his signature and laid them on the table to dry. The wind lifted a page. The 2 lottery tickets fell to the floor, almost getting stepped on by the neighbor's cat. I bent down, picked them up, and put them back in my coin purse, unopened. That night, after dinner, Louise said to me, as we were washing dishes, and what if James comes and asks for forgiveness? He can ask for whatever he wants, I replied, wringing out the dishcloth over the sink. I'm not going back. That night, just as I was about to go to bed, the old phone started vibrating on the plastic table. I saw the screen. It was James's number. I hesitated for a second, but I answered. Mom, he said, his voice low, as if he was afraid I'd scold him. Where are you? I settled into the chair and answered bluntly. In a place where, at the very least, they don't throw my clothes in a pigsty. There was a silence. I could hear his breathing. I had just wanted to know if you're okay, he murmured. Monica, ... You know how she is. She has a temper, but she didn't mean to offend you like that ... She doesn't have to yell, I said, but you don't have to stand there and say nothing while she does it. You didn't have to push me, James. Your silence did all the work. I'm sorry, Mom ... I swear I'll talk to her. I want you to come back. The house isn't the same without you. No, I interrupted him. I'm not coming back. Don't call me anymore. I'm not your mother anymore. And I hung up. I turned off the phone and left it on the table. not looking at it again. The next morning, I gathered my things and said goodbye to Louise. She walked me to the bus stop. "You come back whenever you want," she said, hugging me tightly. I took the bus to Maggie's house. I got off in front of the diner where we worked years ago. There she was, waiting with a big hat and a tired smile. "It's over here," she said, pointing to the dirt path that led to the back of the property. The little house was small. It had an old wooden door, a small window with a blue frame, a cement floor, and a tin roof. It smelled of dust and dampness, but it was whole. "You can be peaceful here. I left you a radio, some rice, beans, salt, and oil. If you need anything else, just let me know. Thank you, Maggie." "Don't worry, I'll manage." I spent most of the day cleaning. I swept the corners, cleared out cobwebs with a broomstick, and washed the floor with soap and water I found in a forgotten bucket. When I finished, I spread my thin mattress on the floor and sat down to rest. That night, I started counting my money. I had about $8,500 left. I took a piece of paper to jot down upcoming expenses. I had nothing but the radio. Then I remembered the lottery tickets. I took them out of my coin purse. One was torn at the corner. The other had letters that were almost blurred from the rain. I turned on the radio. Maggie had left me. Just as they were announcing the results of the drawing, the first ticket didn't have a single matching number. I tossed it aside. The second one, the numbers came out one by one, and they were all there, all of them. I just sat there. I didn't say a word. I didn't scream or laugh. I just picked up a pen and circled the numbers. I wrote the date and time on the back of the ticket, folded it carefully, and put it in my canvas bag. I hid it under my pillow and lay down. The next day, early, I walked back into the city and went to George's office without an appointment. He looked up when he saw me enter. "Mrs. Grace, is something wrong?" I took out the ticket and placed it on his desk. "It's a winner. I don't want anyone to know." George put on his glasses. He examined the paper in detail. "Are you sure?" "I'm sure. I don't want to make a scene. I need to open an account under a different name, one that can't be traced back to me." He nodded. "We can create a protected trust account at a private bank. Do you want to manage it as a fund or an investment?" "I want to start a small foundation. I want it to be called the Hopeful Grace Fund. And what will be its purpose? I want part of the money to go directly to 2 orphanages, one in Zacatecas, another in Aguascalientes. You and I will talk about the rest later." George wrote everything down in his notebook. He explained the legal steps, the registration of the name, and said it would take a few days to finalize. "There's no rush, but don't let anyone find out." I left the office and walked back to my new home. That night, I cooked rice in a small pot on an alcohol stove. I ate my plate in front of the window as the rain started again. It was the same rain from my birthday. I closed the window and bolted the door. I sat by the wall, opened the envelope with the papers for the old house, now signed by George for the sale. I read them one more time, then folded them and put them inside a folder. Before sleeping, I said in a low voice, to no one in particular, "This time, I'm not going to live on anyone else's charity." Monday morning, the phone vibrated on the table while I was drinking my black coffee. It was George. I opened the message. "A couple is interested in the house. They want to set up a medical clinic there." I replied immediately, "Sell it." A few minutes later, he wrote back, "Do you wish to send a notice of the transfer to James?" I called him. "No, George. That house has nothing to do with them anymore, or with me. Let the new owner deal with it. As you wish, Mrs. Grace. Will sign this very week." I put the phone away and tied my shawl. I went to the big market. I tried on some comfortable shoes, a light brown color. I wore them out of the store. I also bought a firm pillow, a pillowcase with big flowers, and a nice tablecloth, the kind I used to only take out for Christmas. I stopped for a long time in front of the stationery store. I ended up buying 20 notebooks. At the checkout, the young man looked at me curiously. "Are the grandkids going to school?" "I don't have any grandkids, but there are children who appreciate what you give them," I said without looking at him. Then, I walked to the print shop. A young man with tattoos helped me. "What would you like to print, ma'am?" 100 flyers. I want them to say, "The Hopeful Grace Fund, supporting school supplies and lunches for children in need." And put this cell phone number at the bottom. Big, clear letters, no frills. "Is this a new government campaign?" "No, son. It's a campaign from the heart," I replied. Back at my little house, with the bag still unopened. The phone rang. It was James. I answered, unenthusiastically. Mom, did you sell the house? Why didn't you tell us? Because I didn't have to. It was my house, and it's not anymore. So where are you now? Do you need anything? I don't need a thing, James. And if I ever do, I'll know what to do without having to ask you. It's just ... I didn't know you were that upset. I thought that with time ... I'm not upset, I'm free. There was a long silence. Before he could say anything else, I hung up. A little while later, a voicemail came through. It was Monica. Her tone was flat, like she was reciting a script. I'm sorry. If you want, you can come back. There won't be any more problems. I didn't reply. I turned off the phone and left it in a drawer with the gas receipts. If someone truly wants to ask for forgiveness, they don't do it with a 10-second audio message. Later, I started cooking. I had carrots, squash, potatoes, and some chicken. I made a light soup with rice and divided it into 10 plastic containers, put them in a bag and walked to the alley where the children from the dump gathered. The soup lady is here, one of them shouted. I want the one that's just a little spicy. Another one requested, raising his hand. There's enough for everyone, but first, you wash your hands, I told them, taking out a bottle of water and soap. Is there bread today, too? A little girl asked, barefoot, with a dirty red ribbon in her hair. Not today, but there will be tomorrow. How does that sound? They all shouted yes. They ate sitting on the curb, with their fingers, talking among themselves as if they were at a party. When they finished, one of them returned his clean container to me. Thank you, Mrs. Grace. You really cook with love. And you all really eat with gusto. I returned home with the empty bag. I went inside, put water on to boil for coffee, and turned on the radio. The news was talking about road blockades, a cyclone near Sinaloa, the rising dollar. I turned it off. I bolted the door and sat on my bed. The new tablecloth was on the table. The pillow smelled like the store. Everything was simple, but it was mine. Before I lay down, I said to myself quietly, you don't get old from wrinkles, you get old from holding on to grudges. And I've let it all go. I turned off the light. I went to bed in peace. The ones who once called me mom no longer had a key to get in. In this house, only those who don't need an excuse to stay are welcome. The next morning, I woke up early with the intention of reorganizing the storeroom a bit. I decided to move the table near the window to let the morning light in. It was one of those old tables I found at a carpenter's workshop. The man gave it to me for a bowl of soup and 2 tortillas I brought him. I sanded down the splinters and got it ready for chopping vegetables. On the wall, I hung some planks where I hammered in hooks. There, I put my clay pot, my cast iron skillet, and the wooden ladle that had been with me for half my life. It took some effort, yes, but I turned that storeroom into a kitchen. It wasn't big or modern, but it smelled of sautéed onions, toasted cumin, and hot tortillas. Not expensive perfume. No one came in with clean shoes to criticize or open the window, because it smells like an old lady. Once it was ready, I painted a wooden sign with what I had on hand. I hung it on the front gate. Mrs. Grace's home cooking for sale at the door. No online orders. The first pot was black beans with ipasok. I also made squash with pasit, chili and corn cakes stuffed with cheese. Everything was $2. Is this where they sell homemade food? A sweaty man with a hard hat asked. He was on a cargo tricycle. If you're hungry, yes. If you're here to haggle, keep going. He laughed. I'm hungry, ma'am, and happy to pay. He took 3 containers, 1 of each. The next day, he came back. The third time, he brought his cousin. Little by little, more people started coming. A woman who sold jello recommended me to her daughter. A shoeshine boy passing by asked for just rice, saying it was the only thing that sat well with his stomach. No one asked for a menu or complained. I served, I collected the money, and I kept going. One afternoon, a woman who sold oranges on the corner sat on the curb in front of my door. While eating her corn cake, she looked at me and asked, "And your children don't visit? I mean, a lady like you. You'd think you'd have someone to look after you, right? And you think having children is a guarantee of company," I said without stopping my dicing of a tomato. Well, one would think, right? Well, no. But as you can see, and I nodded my head toward a group of children sitting and eating in the corner by the gate. Those ones don't share my blood, but they haven't failed me a single day. And aren't you afraid of being alone? I'm not alone. I'm with myself. And with this pot, look, I said, lifting the clay pot. The children were almost always the same ones. One in particular, Matthew, started showing up every afternoon. "Can I wash the dishes for you, ma'am? And what do you get out of that?" "Well, you feed me, don't you?" It made me laugh. I handed him the soap and a sponge. From then on, he came every day. He washed well, never broke anything. I'd give him a cup of rice or a corn cake and $1. "Can I come on Sunday, too?" he asked one day. "You can come as long as you know where to put your feet and how to speak with respect." "I know how. My grandma taught me." "And your grandma?" "She died when I was 6. He fell silent. I gave him another tortilla without saying anything. A week later, while I was wrapping up food for some construction workers, I saw someone standing on the other side of the street. It was Monica. Simple clothes, no makeup, hair pulled back with an old rubber band. She stood there, as if hesitating. Then she crossed. In her hands was a small white box with pink lettering. "Hello, .. she said, barely audible. "I brought this tres leches cake that says, 'Get well soon.'" I looked at her, took the box, and placed it back in front of her. "We don't need any more sugar here. I have enough sweetness with what I cook," I said without looking her in the eye. She stood there for a few seconds and then left. She didn't look back. That night, James sent a text. "I miss you. You don't have to keep on like this. Come back." I opened it, read it without emotion. I deleted it. A little later, Matthew arrived with a small bag. "I brought you this. It cost me 50 cents at the market. Isn't it pretty?" It was a plastic bead bracelet. It said Grace with crooked letters. I put it on. "Some gifts don't cost much but are worth more than a whole house," I told him. He laughed. As he was leaving, I asked, "Where do you sleep?" "Well, .. over there, in the tunnel, with some other kids." "And don't you get cold?" "Yeah, but I wear 2 pairs of pants." "Do you want to stay here? It's no palace, but the wind doesn't get in." "Really, really? You just have to promise not to steal my beans." "Never. Your beans are the best I've ever tasted." I put a mat down for him next to my bed. That night, we both slept under the same roof, with a pot on the stove and dogs barking in the distance. Before turning off the light, I went out to the yard. The bougainvillea already had a branch bending inward. I tied it up with a piece of string. I didn't want anyone to trip. I thought to myself as I folded the tablecloth, sometimes you don't need to start over. You just need to feel useful again. And that night, I slept without anyone criticizing my food, without anyone denying me a chair in my own house. Here, finally, everything tasted of peace. The griddle was already hot and my hands smelled of fresh corn dough. At that hour, the light from the yard came through the crack in the curtain, illuminating the exact corner where I let the corn cakes rest before frying them. Matthew was shucking corn into a basket, whistling softly. It was then that I heard the sound of a car stopping outside. It wasn't the gas delivery man, nor the neighbor who sells bread. I knew that engine. I didn't get up. I continued with my work, patiently shaping the next tortilla. A few minutes later, there was a knock on the door. 3 short taps, not loud, not weak, like someone who isn't sure they deserve to have the door opened for them. Matthew peeked through the curtain. "There's a man out there. Looks like he hasn't slept well." I was the one who opened it. James was standing there, in a wrinkled shirt, a bag of fruit in one hand and one of those free pharmacy tote bags in the other. He wasn't wearing a watch, or a ring, or anything that made a sound. He looked at me. I said nothing. I just pushed the door open enough for him to pass, but not all the way inside. He understood and stayed in the yard. "Can I sit down?" he asked. I pointed to the small bench next to the orange tree. He sat down carefully, as if his burden wasn't just physical. "I didn't come to bother you. I came to talk," he began, his voice lower than I remembered. I went back to the griddle, picked up the first golden brown corn cakes, and placed them on the wooden board. He was still there, not daring to lift his head. "Monica ... She's been hospitalized in Monterey. The doctor says she had an emotional breakdown, or whatever they call it. He says she's confronting everything she's kept bottled up for a long time." I remained silent, checking that the flame wasn't too high. "They told me she needs help, that she needs to acknowledge what she did wrong. And I do, too." I looked up. It was clear he wasn't just talking about Monica anymore. "I thought you were just throwing a tantrum. Mom, I thought you were angry and that you'd get over it with time. But no, you didn't get angry. You left. And now, when I go back, you're not there. Not in the house, not in the same old place. The house was yours. The life was, too. I just got out of the way, I said, folding the dish towel over my shoulder. James reached into his bag and pulled out a crumpled envelope. Monica asked me to bring this to you. She wrote it in therapy. I haven't read it. I took it from him and opened it slowly. It was several pages of uneven handwriting. It said that she had wanted me gone from the very first day, that she couldn't stand sharing her space with me, that she had done everything possible to make me feel like an intruder, that now she dreams of me standing in the middle of the pig pen, with my clothes dirty, my eyes full of shame, that she would understand if I didn't forgive her, but she needed to say it. I put the letter away without a word. James then took out a small photo album, pictures of him as a child. In the first one, he and I were sitting on a mat in the yard of the old house. In another, he was dressed as a cowboy for a school play, and at the end, one from his graduation, his face full of acne and a crooked smile. I don't want you to forget this, he said, handing me the album. I looked at it for a moment, then handed it back. I don't forget, James, but I'm not going to cling to the past as if that justifies everything else. A memory doesn't clean up what you let rot. At that moment, Matthew came from the back carrying a basket of corn. He froze when he saw James. Who's he? He asked in a low voice. Someone who came to visit, I said, leaving it at that. And who are you? James asked, curious. I'm Matthew, the boy replied. I help the lady with the dishes and the shopping. She also feeds me. You live here. Matthew looked at me before answering. I nodded my head. Yes. I don't have a home, but they let me stay here. As long as I don't make a mess. James pressed his lips together. His hands fidgeted on his legs. He looked at me again. Mom, ... I know I was wrong. But ... is there no way back? There are ways for us to see each other, to talk if we need to. But living like before, that's over. What is broken with contempt cannot be glued back together with nostalgia. James swallowed hard. And you ... you don't want to be my mom anymore. I was your mother when you needed me most. Now I'm the lady who cooks here, and that's enough for me. Matthew, without a word, went back inside the house. James sat for a while longer, staring at the ground. Can I leave this for you? He said, pointing to the bag of fruit. Leave it there. I'll see what I do with it. I stood up, wiped my hands on my apron, and went back inside. Before closing the door, I said, without looking back, it's not that I hold a grudge, son. It's just that I no longer have room at my table for things that don't nourish me. That night, the bag was still outside. I brought it in, peeled the fruit, and set it to cook with sugar and cloves. I made a big pot of tangerine preserves. The next day, I served it in little cups to the children who came for breakfast. When one of them asked, "Did you make this, too?" I replied, "I cooked it, but the ingredients came from someone who is learning to say sorry without words." Several days went by without news. Then, a sealed envelope from George's office arrived. James's name was on the front, in blue ink. I opened it calmly, sitting at the kitchen table while water boiled on the stove. It was a formal request. James wanted to buy back the house. The same house where they had cast me aside, where they had pushed me to the ground without a second thought. Minutes later, the phone rang. George, as always, spoke in his dry but respectful voice. "Mrs. Grace, you saw the letter, I assume." "I saw it. Do you want to respond to your son? Do you want to stop the process?" "No, Mr. George. If he has the money, let him buy it. That house stopped being mine the day they sent me to the pig pen. As you wish. I just wanted to be sure. Thank you, George." I hung up. I stared at the envelope for a moment before using it as scrap paper to write down the month's expenses. The next day, I walked to the old church, the same one where I had James baptized. The roof is still the same, full of leaks, but the stained glass window still filters the light as if the sky were seeping through a crack. I saw Sister Anne on the left-hand pew, folding altar cloths. I approached quietly. "Grace, is that really you?" "I'm still here, sister. The wind hasn't carried me off yet. And the boy? How is your son?" "Who knows? We're each on our own path. Now, as they say in the old country, after 40, everyone carries their own cross and their own shadow." Sister Anne smiled, the way someone does when they understand without needing to ask more. "Shall we pray together?" "I didn't come to ask for anything today, just to breathe." The air hurts less in here. I sat in a pew. I didn't say an Our Father. I just let the silence wrap around me like a warm blanket. That same afternoon, Matthew came running, his shoelaces untied. Mrs. Grace, they approved my scholarship. What scholarship? The one for school. I put your name down as my guardian. I told them you feed me, that you help me with my homework, and that you let me sleep under a roof. And they believed. You, yes. They asked if you were my grandmother. I told them, I don't know, but she takes better care of me than mine did. I hugged him, without a word. When you earn a child's affection, you don't need blood. You just need consistency. 2 days later, the phone rang. Unknown number. I answered. Mrs. Grace, it's Monica. Yes, I'm listening. I'm not trying to justify myself. I just wanted to say that you were right. Right about what? About leaving. I didn't see what I was doing until I was left alone. I'm in therapy now. There are days I don't even recognize myself. That's called a conscience. It hurts, but it cleanses. I'm not looking for forgiveness. I wanted to tell you that I admire your courage. Monica, I hope you use it to do something good. Don't hurt anyone else. That's enough. We hung up without tears. Sometimes forgiveness isn't spoken. It's demonstrated by not repeating the harm. That night, Natalie, the woman from the corner store, invited me to her house. They were celebrating her eldest daughter's marriage to a young man from Chiapas who owned a mechanic shop. I arrived with a dish of rice pudding. Mrs. Grace, come on in. One of the nephews shouted. You get to sit at the head of the table. You hear, Natalie said. You've earned it for being such a good neighbor. Don't exaggerate, I replied, laughing. I barely heat up beans. The atmosphere was light. There were jokes, applause, hugs. A little girl with braided hair approached me with a half-eaten tortilla in her hand. Are you the lady who sells the little tamales? Yes. Do you like them? I love them. Tomorrow I'll come and help you clean the table, okay? But if you help me, you'll have to wash the dishes, too. I don't mind. The children's laughter was like music to my tired bones. On my way home, I sat down at the wooden desk Maggie had lent me. I took out the envelope where I kept my important papers. I began to write, with a slow, deliberate hand, my new will, the real one. No property in the Ramos name. Nothing for those who treated me like a burden. I distributed the funds calmly. A portion for the Hopeful Grace Fund, another for the Santa Clara Nursing Home, and whatever was left for Matthew, the only one who ever hugged me without asking for an inheritance. As I signed it, I felt a sense of closure. Not with resentment, but with justice. I put the paper away, turned off the light, and sat in the darkness for a while longer. Just the murmur of the crickets. I said to myself softly, so no one could hear, you don't need to be remembered with flowers. It's enough not to be remembered with rage. And that night, I slept without dreaming. Not because I was sad, but because, finally, I was missing nothing. I went to the flea market on a Tuesday, for no special reason. I just felt like getting my hands dirty. I walked to Mr. Jacinto's stall, where they sell plants in black plastic bags with handmade labels. What are you looking for, Mrs. Grace? He asked, tipping his cap with the back of his hand. Something that blooms without making a big fuss. Then take this purple bougainvillea. It doesn't ask for water all the time and doesn't complain if it gets direct sun. Just what I need. I walked back with the cutting in my arms, wrapped in newspaper. Matthew opened the gate from the inside and blurted out, "Ah, I knew it. Are we going to plant something?" "Well, if you knew, then go find the shovel," I told him. We crouched down together. I marked the circle where I wanted to plant it with my foot. He dug with force, but the shovel twisted every time. "Slow down, kid. The earth opens up better if you treat it nicely. I'm just excited to see it grow fast," he said. "Things that grow too fast also fall too fast. You know, just look at bad decisions. Double quotes. Matthew let out a little laugh and kept digging. When we finally planted the bougainvillea, I tied some broomsticks into a cross for it to climb on. Why this flower, Grace? Because it doesn't need to be cut or shown off. It blooms for itself. Wouldn't you like to be like that? Yeah, but sometimes you do want people to see you, right? It's okay to want that. Just don't let it become a need. You have value even if no one is applauding. That week, several letters arrived for the Hopeful Grace Fund. A woman from Durango sent a photo of her son in a new school uniform. Another from Zacatecas expressed thanks for the groceries she was able to buy with the support. Matthew helped me open the envelopes. Who are they? Families who have no one else to ask. People who have nothing, but still share their thanks. Matthew read aloud, "Thank you for giving us a push, even though you don't even know us." I looked at him. That's how help should be, son. Not out of obligation, but just because. One afternoon, I stopped by George's office to check on the transfer of the old house. Everything was in order. "The new owner wants to demolish it and build a dental office," George said. "Well, let them pull the teeth out of the memories," I replied without thinking. George laughed. "Few people sign these papers so calmly. That's because I've already been through the worst pain. Signing now doesn't cost a thing." On my way back, I passed by my old house. It didn't even have a door anymore. The facade looked like the open mouth of someone who had screamed so much they'd lost their voice. That same night, Monica returned. Not alone. She came with a woman, dressed in white, with the face of a therapist. They stopped in front of the gate. Monica was holding an envelope. "We didn't come to bother you," the woman said. "I hope not," I replied, not opening the gate all the way. Monica held out the envelope. I took it without touching her hand. "Thank you for receiving it," she said in a low voice. "Thank you for leaving it." I waited for them to leave. Inside, I opened the envelope. It was a photo of Monica sitting with paintbrushes, teaching a group of children. On the back, she had written, "I don't expect forgiveness. I'm just trying not to do any more harm." I placed the photo between the pages of an old book, not to save it, but so it wouldn't blow away in the wind. The next day, Matthew came home from school with a new notebook. "Look, Mrs. Grace," I wrote my name. On the first page, in big letters, it read, "My name is Matthew. Who taught you?" I did, just so I don't forget who I am. Then don't just put it in the notebook, put it in everything you do. That night, I took an old apron, cut it up, and sewed some straps onto it. I made a little backpack for Matthew. I put a Tupperware container, a pencil, and a blank sheet of paper inside. On the paper, I wrote, "Take this with you, but don't let it weigh you down." On Saturday, we cooked in the yard. I made bean soup with ipasote. The neighbors brought bread, tortillas, and even soda. Natalie, the store owner, hugged me when she arrived. "We finally get to eat together. It's never too late when there are hot beans." A man in a hat asked, "And you don't have children?" I did. "But some leave on their own, and some stay without you having to ask." Matthew went from table to table, collecting plates. Some gave him tips. A little girl offered him a piece of candy, and he saved it as if it were treasure. At the end, we sat on the porch. The bougainvillea already had flowers. Not many, but they were strong. "Is it going to stay there forever?" Matthew asked, pointing at the plant. "I don't know if I'll stay forever. But she, if no one rips her out, will keep on bringing color." Matthew leaned his head on my shoulder. "And what if someone wants to cut it? Then they'll have to learn that some flowers don't let themselves be cut." And we stayed like that. No more questions. Just watching the purple of the bougainvillea against the orange sky. Because some things don't need a vase to be beautiful. Because some lives don't seek applause, just space to bloom. I woke up, as I always do, before the sun hit the tin roof. I put my shawl on, went to the small stove, and put water on to boil. The coffee was already ground from the night before. I poured it into a chipped mug that said "Souvenir of Taquisquiapan." I cut a slice of die-old bread. I brushed it with a little lard, toasted it, and ate it without sugar. Outside, the birds were already looking for crumbs. I hadn't planned on telling anyone. I didn't expect anyone to remember either. At this age, you don't really expect to be celebrated. Just not being forgotten is a win. Matthew came in, dragging his backpack. "Good morning," he shouted. Like every morning, as he hung his uniform on the back of the chair, he pulled a folded piece of paper from his bag. He handed it to me with a serious face. "I didn't show this to anyone. It's just for you." It was a card made with crayons. On the front was a drawing of a woman with a bun in her hair and an apron. Inside, written with great effort, "Happy the day you was born." I didn't say anything. I folded it carefully and put it in the little metal box where I used to keep old bills and lottery tickets. Now it's where I keep the things that are actually worth something. Matthew glanced at me. "Are you mad?" "No, son. It's just that some kinds of happiness, you keep quiet, so they don't escape." I closed up the food stall early that day. I told Matthew I'd be back in the afternoon. I grabbed my straw hat and went to catch the shuttle van. The driver recognized me. Mrs. Grace, what a surprise to see you here. I have to visit someone today, someone special. More than you know. I got off near the Leon nursing home. I didn't bring flowers or cake. I just had a few dollars, a bag of oranges, and my body, which can still handle the midday heat. I entered the nursing home quietly. I asked for Mrs. Elena. She's in the bed at the end. She can barely see anymore, but she can still hear well, the nurse said. I approached. Elena was thin, her skin covered in brown spots. She was dozing, but when she sensed my shadow, she opened her eyes. Who, she asked. An old visitor, Mother Elena, I said, without saying more. I peeled an orange for her, giving her slice by slice. Do you remember when I used to hide in the kitchen to eat the raw dough? She let out a faint laugh, her mouth half open. She nodded slowly. I knew it was you. You smelled of cinnamon and fear. We stayed there for a good while. We didn't need many words. Some silences healed more than speeches. When she started to nod off again, I got up, adjusted her blanket, and said goodbye with a thank you. I don't know if it was for my childhood or for not letting her die alone. I left without looking back. Instead of going straight home, I walked to the Sunday park. I bought myself a vanilla ice cream cone. I sat on a bench in front of the fountain. Some kids were playing soccer. One of them kicked badly, and the ball hit my leg. Sorry, ma'am. I didn't mean to. You think you're messy or something, I said, laughing. Almost, he replied and winked at me. I kicked the ball back to him gently. The hours passed. The sun went down. I walked back slowly. Mufti was already home, sitting on the step, with a little box in his hands. I was waiting for you, he said when he saw me. Well, I'm here. What do you have there? He handed me a small pastry wrapped in a napkin. I bought it with the money I got for cleaning the dishes. It's not much, but it's sweet. And are you going to eat? I already had a tortilla with salt. This is for you. We split it in half, but he insisted I eat the first piece. It tastes like heaven, I told him. More than the chocolate cake from the supermarket. Much more. Because this one has a name and a heart. Afterward, we washed the dishes together. I swept the kitchen, and he filled the water pitcher. We open for business tomorrow. There's always business if there's hunger, and you're always hungry. He laughed and hugged me from the side. I put the little card back in the box, next to a folded bill, a holy card of St. Jude, and an old drawing from Matthew. I sat in the hammock. From there, I could see the bougainvillea. It already had 2 new flowers. I thought out loud, you're born with screams, and you end in silence. But as long as there's someone to give you a piece of bread or a little card made with crayons, you don't need anyone to sing you happy birthday. There was no big cake, no balloons, no music, but there was remembrance, and there was human warmth. Sometimes that's enough. Sometimes that's everything. I put out the oil lamp. I locked the door securely, and I went to bed. Tomorrow, I get to be born all over again. One morning, while sweeping the entrance to my house, I realized I no longer waited for letters, or calls, or apologies. It had been so long since the last time I dreamed of someone knocking on my door asking for forgiveness that the silence had become my companion. And it feels so good when your soul no longer trembles every time the phone rings. Matthew had grown a little. He no longer spoke with the same urgency as before. His steps were more confident, the hunger in his eyes less pronounced. Every night, he would sit down to do his homework with an old lamp, and if he couldn't figure something out, he'd come with his notebook in hand, not afraid to ask. Once he told me, I don't think you're my grandmother, but you're not just a lady who cooks either. Then what am I? My home. I didn't correct him after that. I didn't tell him to be quiet. I just served him more beans and gave him another hot tortilla. The neighbors started leaving little notes on the gate. Can you save 2 corn cakes for tomorrow? My mom wants to try the rice pudding. One time, a woman knocked with tears in her eyes. My daughter left a man who was hitting her. She's back, but she won't talk to anyone. Could you talk to her? Just for a little while, calmly. I served her a cup of coffee, and the young woman sat under the tree in the yard. I didn't say anything. I let the silence do its work. Sometimes, you just need someone to listen to you chew without judgment. Soon after, 3 more women arrived. One sold rags at the flea market, another collected bottles to sell, and the last was a single mother. They asked if they could help with the food. I said yes, but that this wasn't about making money. This was about learning to give without losing yourself. We formed a small collective. We cooked together, each bringing what she could: stale bread, onions, tomatoes. We started distributing lunches on Sundays to the families at the landfill. We didn't have a uniform, a logo, or government permits, but we had willpower, and you can't buy that. One afternoon, amidst the steaming pots, Matthew hugged me from behind and said, "One day, I want to have a kitchen like this, with your name on the entrance. Don't put my name, put yours, but cook with the hands you have now, not with the ones you think you'll have when you're a grown-up." He nodded and went back to chopping onions. He didn't say anything else. The dental office turned out nice. Sometimes I would walk by, just to see if it still smelled of new paint. Once, I saw a mother go in with her son by the hand. The boy was scared. I remembered when James used to cry because he didn't want to go to the dentist. I stood there for a few minutes and then continued on my way. It didn't hurt. Not anymore. One morning, I received a letter from the orphanage in Zakats. It came with a drawing, a house with a woman in the center, surrounded by children with big hands. Below it said, "Thank you, Mrs. Grace. You planted hope here, too." I hung it on the kitchen wall, next to the sign that said, "No credit, but we have trust." The Hopeful Grace Fund continued to grow, not in money, but in impact. Mr. George handled the legal side. He visited me every month. He always brought sweet bread and the printed reports. He would leave them on the table without much fanfare. "And how's the lawyering going?" I'd ask him. "With less faith than your kitchen, but we're still here." One day, Matthew came home with a folded piece of paper. He was nervous. "They asked for an essay at school, about who inspires me. I wrote about you, and what did you say? That you're like a book. It seems to grow on its own, but it gives shade and color without asking for anything in return." I couldn't help it. I cried, but not from sadness. It was the kind of tears that come when you see yourself reflected in someone else and recognize yourself without a mirror. On the last Sunday of the month, we organized a community meal. More than 30 people came. Neighbors, friends, children who used to only ask for water. We cooked 3 pots of pozole, made tortillas by hand, and served hibiscus iced tea. At the end of the day, someone put on music, a slow danzon. A woman took my hand. "Dance with me, Mrs. Grace. Today is a day to celebrate." I danced, with slow steps, with hips that no longer move like they used to, but with an awakened heart. Matthew applauded from the side. "Go, Grace," he shouted. That night, I went to bed late. My body ached, but my soul did not. I thought about James, about Monica. Not with hatred, not with nostalgia. I thought of them the way one thinks of healed wounds, with respect, but without touching them again. Before sleeping, I wrote in a notebook, "Today I did nothing extraordinary. I just lived, and that is enough. And if tomorrow is my time to leave, let it be with my hands smelling of corn, my heart warm, and my soul light. I don't need tributes. I don't want statues, just for someone, someday, to say, 'A woman cooked here who didn't ask for permission to be happy.'" This story is based on true events. The names and locations have been changed to protect the identity of the person involved. It is the story of a mother who sacrificed her entire life for her children and grandchildren, only to be despised, used, and abandoned in the end. But when she had nothing left to lose, she rose up, and this time, she lived for herself. We don't tell this story to judge, but so that anyone who hears it might stop and think, how many mothers are suffering in silence within their own homes. Now, I'm curious about you, the one listening to my story. What would you do if you were in my place? Have you ever experienced something similar? Let me know in the comments. In the meantime, I'll leave 2 of the channel's favorite stories on the end screen for you, and I have no doubt they will surprise you. Thank you for staying until the end.